Hi there. I wanted to take a quick moment to talk about the inquiry unit. You are in school districts right now, so it's kind of hard to touch base with you and answer questions on the spot. I still want to make sure I'm giving you lots of support. So what I decided to do is open up that rough lesson plan I was starting to write, and I continued to work on it. So I thought I would go through that and model it a little bit just so you can kind of see what you could do with yours too. Now I still haven't copied mine into the SOE lesson plan template. So don't forget to do that when you're all said and done. The SOE lesson plan template's really nice. Obviously, you would pull out the pieces that don't pertain to you, like demographics of your class, for example. So I started writing in black when I was with you guys that day, and I have now switched to blue. And I don't recommend that you do that. I'm just doing this for you so you know this is what I wrote the first time I was with you, and the blue is now my new material. It's just a visual thing. It's nothing I would leave on there normally. All right, so first of all, I realized that in my original, I never said how long my class periods were, and I get why, because I'm pretending. So I went back and added my thoughts there with the 90 minutes with flexibility. I am noticing too, this book ties into science so well that I could take probably time from that as well to work on this stuff. So I know that there's flexibility here. Okay, so the last time you saw this, my students were reading the book Casper Jaggy, and we were doing inquiry uh, discussions based on that. So, day one, we were talking procedure, background information. I was kind of going to, my thought was to teach them how to do this, and we would model it with maybe a short story or an informational piece, something easy. Now, ideally, I would have liked to have done the modeling and the teaching earlier, but even if I had, I probably would still have to spend day one getting things set up, just teaching procedure again. So day two is inquiry time, where we're going to read pages 1 through 10 in class the day before. So now when they come in, we're ready to discuss. I think I'm not going to produce these questions for them. I'm predicting they're going to ask me a few questions, and I'm predicting what tangents I expect to be on. And I will welcome them by having some resources set aside. So I've got questions, tangents, and tools prepared, waiting in the wings. All right, so we're going to go through. I would expect this to be a really easy day. Those particular pages weren't that in depth. Now, because I'm saying that this is fourth grade, I'm going to give them homework. Depending on what grade you assigned, you may not. And even if you have fourth grade, it doesn't mean you have to give homework. That's just what I'm choosing to do for mine. So I would say that I'm giving them pages 10 through 24, and they have to track their thinking. So I also know that my district's probably going to have some kind of RTI time, or maybe I'll have another block of just some reading, something like that. Plus, I know that this text is accessible to fourth grade. All right, day two, I'll have them come in and we'll start out by summarizing learned material from yesterday. Just kind of a refresher. What did you learn yesterday about the featured person, Casper, or about maybe the culture of the people, something like that. And now it's time to get set up for our inquiry circles. And I'll probably say something like this. Friends, yesterday we learned a lot about Casper and his history, didn't we? And you told me a lot of interesting facts that I did not know. Well, today we're going to dig deeper into how he became really good at making cheese, right? In your small groups, I want you to discuss page by page interesting facts you learned and questions you have. And in teams, we're going to try to answer all of those questions. So basically, I'm setting them up for research, right? For inquiry-based research. And so I came up again with the questions that I think they're going to have. This particular section of reading gets really in depth to the process of making cheese. I'm a little nervous about these questions. They're kind of tough. So I need to also be ready for some tangents that are as equally challenging. How is cheese made? How is calcium? How much calcium is in different foods? And what is butterfat? So these things are causing me to start thinking about, okay, I need to have a different set of text. Of course, Google Earth, because they might ask about broadhead. And I found two YouTube videos on the the cheese making process. They're a little goofy, like the birth of the cheese curd is set to Lady Gaga's "Born This Way," but it is good, the content. And I'm also going to bring in lots of clean product containers so we can look at the calcium labels on the back. And I want them to make the connection that um, milk has a lot more calcium than, say, soda. And in the text, it actually talks about how much calcium a child needs. So hopefully they make that connection. All right. So now when I get to this point, I think this day is going to be pretty intense. So I don't think I'm going to be ready to plow ahead to the next section of reading. Matter of fact, if I could go on a field trip right after this, I would, because this section of reading was all about the cheese making process. Kind of. It didn't explain the process of making cheese. It just piqued their interest. Now I feel like I need to go show them this. And these Discover Wisconsin videos just really, again, further the curiosity of knowing how cheese is made. It doesn't really answer it for me. So I need to be ready. So after, I think day three is going to be, let's look at, let's talk to someone, let's investigate about the cheese making process. Now, I'm struggling with this because I know I can't take them. I don't think I can take them to a cheese factory. So the next thing that popped into my head is I have a friend that hauls milk, and he does haul milk to places to make cheese. And the milk truck is really cool. So I thought I could ask him to bring that to school, and I'd like the kids to see how big the rig is, and maybe he can explain how he picks the milk up, takes it to a basically a switching point, and that point it's dumped into an even bigger tanker, and that tanker takes it really really far away to make cheese. Like, that conversation could be pretty cool. Then the second thing I'd like to do on that day is see if I can't get someone, Mike or someone from a local cheese factory, to come in and answer the kids' questions, and maybe they would have photos of the cheese making process in that building. Maybe I could put together kind of a Google slideshow of some type. And I would like that person to bring in samples of cheese, like fresh cheese, so they can kind of taste how that fresh cheese tastes different than craft singles, stuff like that. And maybe I could also find out the calcium level for each type of cheese. That'd be kind of cool. So at the end of that session, then it's time to summarize our findings. So of course, back in our large groups, I can ask students to tell me what they've learned, and that will be, my prediction is pretty explosive as far as, like, they hopefully they learned a lot. And then depending on time, what I have left for blocks of time, I would love to see students work in groups of, say, maybe, I don't know, 4 to 5. Work on an iPad to respond to a voice thread prompt describing how the cheese tasted. So I would make a new voice thread, and so I can show you a sample of one. I would make a new voice thread where each one of these little squares is a flavor of cheese that they tasted. So when they click on that picture, they can record a comment of what they thought about that cheese, how it tasted to them, how they would describe it, and whether or not they liked it, that type of stuff. Or maybe I could switch that and say, if their classmate already said what they were going to say, maybe they could talk about what they learned about the cheese making process. So I would come up with a few different ways for students to be able to show their understanding. And so before the day is over, I probably need to assign readings, because I think at this point I probably am ready to move on to the next section, which probably brings us back to his life more so. At the end of this section, we're just starting to get into his success. Um, so that's a sample of where I'm at. I can already tell. Originally, I thought I was going to take him on a field trip, and now I'm not feeling so good about that anymore. So I think I'm going to hang my hat on this block of cheese type of research. I think I'm going to find boxes and have the kids design a block of cheese, and then off that will contain pieces of research, maybe flaps or pieces that they pull out of the block that tell them little facts about the cheese making process. I'm not entirely sure where I'm going to go with that yet, but I know that that's actually coming up pretty soon, because at this point in the book, we are almost halfway through. Actually, we are halfway through. So I better start thinking about vocalizing the culminating project with my students. I don't want to wait till the end because I want them to kind of get geared up for what do they want to put on their block of cheese. I probably would still keep these resources handy. Um, you can see that I've got a pattern here: questions, tangents, tools, right? And not all my tools are text. Sometimes they're people. Sometimes it's food, videos, product containers. Like your with inquiry-based learning, your resources don't just have to be worksheets, handouts, and books, right? Okay, so hopefully that gives you a little bit, a little more support as you design your own inquiry lesson, or I'm sorry, inquiry unit. Don't be surprised if when you compare this stuff with your classmate that theirs looks completely different than yours. I've had 3 or 4 people come in and we talked about their lessons and they all look different. And that's okay because with inquiry based we can really spin off in different directions, and some of you are using multiple texts. Like you've got in my classroom I just have students reading one text, the Casper Jaggi book, but some of you have leveled text. You've picked out chunks of text, and that's cool too. So hopefully that gives you a little support, and we'll talk more about it in class. If you have any questions, definitely get a hold of me.